Strategic partnerships between academic institutions and academia industry collaborations in domestic and international are going to play a significant role for the growth of the global higher education sector post-COVID-19 pandemic. In this panel discussion, moderated by ETGovernment editor T. Radhakrishna, eminent academicians from India, USA, and East Africa will share their views on building a future-ready workforce. I would like to invite T. Radhakrishna, editor ETGovernment, to moderate this panel discussion on the topic International Collaborations for Building Future-Ready Workforce, a Global Perspective.
Dear academicians, on behalf of ETGovernment, the Economic Times, I welcome our distinguished guests and guest audience to the panel discussion on international collaborations to build future-ready workforce, a global perspective, which is part of Education, Innovation and Skill Summit organized by ETGovernment and ET-Hyderabad. It is indeed a great honor and privilege to moderate today's discussion. I extend a warm welcome to panelists and guest speakers. I am joined by eminent academicians, Professor S. Sadagopan, Founder Director, IIIT Bangalore, who is the chairman of the today's session, Professor Narayanan, PJ, Director, IIIT Hyderabad, Professor Sandeep Gopalan, Vice-Chancellor, Carolina University, USA, Professor Pulappa Subbarao, Vice-Chancellor, Millennium University, Blantyre, Malawi, a country in East Africa, Professor Janat Shah, Director, IIM-Udaipur, Professor Shailendra Singh, Director, IIM Ranchi, Professor Bharat Bhaskar, Director, IIM-Raipur, Mr. C.S. Suryanarayana, Country Manager Mobility, Aruba Networks, India. Once again, a warm welcome to our guest, sir. May I request Professor S. Sadagopan to give introductory remarks on today's theme, that is global collaborations to build future-ready workforce.
Thank you, Mr. Radhakrishna. Thanks for inviting me. I think we have an amazing set of speakers. You managed to assemble all of them later half of the day. It's very nice. I think the title goes like International Collaboration to Build Future-Ready Workforce, a Global Perspective. We do have global universities represented here. And let me kind of take a minute to say that it's very interesting. Post-COVID, I think a lot of new things are actually emerging. And I think what makes sense for today's discussion is, during the COVID time, lots of us actually came together. Even if you actually see the one side that was used by most people in the planet to know more about COVID was a dashboard put up by Johns Hopkins. And on the top, it actually said systems engineering. So it's interesting. System engineering is getting visited today. The idea is epidemiologists, computer scientists, probabilists and statisticians, and visualization people, obviously computer science, data science people, some engineers, architects, all have to come together. Our own Bangalore IIITB was instrumental in putting a dashboard for Karnataka. I think the key is you need wide range of people to come together. Diversity is important, diversity of disciplines. And I think COVID has proved that it's a global issue. So you need diversity of cultures and diversity of countries and diversity of viewpoints. And what can be a better than to have international pool of students coming together and solving global problems. Okay, so that seems to be the interesting stuff. And of course, another thing which also we all realized is everyone was Zooming. Zoom actually became a verb, right? And amazing, zooming from laptops, zooming from desktop, zooming from phones, zooming from tablets. Okay, so I think suddenly the globe had actually become a village. So I think this is the right time for all of us, particularly we in the academics, both the teachers and the students, come together to actually look at larger issues. And that is what I thought would be the best backdrop for today's discussion. Over to you, Mr. Radhakrishna. Once again, thank you.
Mr. P.J. Narayan, welcome to the panel discussion. Your introductory remarks on the global collaborations.
Thank you, Mr. Radhakrishna, and thanks ET-Government for arranging this and inviting me to this. Yes, Professor Shadagopan said the right things in the start. Suddenly, because we are all in Zoom University, everybody is equal. My students are taking the same courses over internet, so there is no reason why other institution students also can join. Similarly, vice versa. We did try doing that, some of these things. So internationalization as a whole, I mean, I don't need to say anything about the merits of internationalization. I think getting a wider perspective through direct interaction with students who look different, think different, and are trained different is good for everybody. But in the Indian context, we should also talk about globalization or internationalization, that is in the education experience. We are somehow limited to thinking only one way. When we talk about global experience, student exchange program, somehow India looks at only, the West, not the other, the diversity means just that. Diversity doesn't mean only one kind. You look at Europe or USA only, but not to, other Indian institutions or other institutions in South Asia or Africa. So, I mean, we bring wealth of experience is brought by everybody. So that is one point I want to make. Whenever, we talk about international experience, we are typically thinking of one thing. And this COVID times or this, suddenly the online education and doing things over the network, we were forced into it, but we got used to it somehow. And there is no reason why we should not continue this, at least partly so. So in the early part of the, when the monsoon semester started in August, we were preparing for it at IIT-Hyderabad. And, we got inquiries actually from global universities like Carnegie Mellon and University of Southern California through friends. They said, we have students who are admitted into our programs. They are in India. Can they come and sit in your campus and have some campus experience? I said, well, of course, we'll welcome that, but our campus also is virtual. And if they want to join a virtual campus, that's okay. Now, anyway, this was forced by some of the circumstances, but there is no reason why this cannot be the new norm, at least part of the education. We can have in the same class, we can have students from other institutions in India or other institutions in the world. And so similarly, our students can join real classes happening in other institutions in the world. And that opportunity somehow COVID has brought, and I think we should exploit that. And otherwise, there's all kinds of visa issues, expense issues, so many issues to get some of these experiences that has all become compressed into this tube that we are sitting in front of anyway. So I think we have more opportunity, and I'm eager to hear from others. Over to you.
Thank you, Professor Narayan. Professor Sandeep Gopalan, welcome to the panel discussion today. May I have your introductory remarks on today's panel discussion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Ramakrishna and ET, for the opportunity to participate today. Obviously, this is a massive topic, right? I mean, it has so many dimensions that it is very hard to do justice even to a segment of what the topic entails. So rather than taking it at one big, massive chunk, I'll try to break it down into two themes that I'd like to speak on or focus on at least. And the first of those is the university as a provider of skills for the employment market. Right? So in other words, the role of institutions within the higher education landscape as the primary producer of workers for the future of work, which of course, as we know, is changing. And the second theme or broad umbrella under which to examine these issues might be the role of higher education institutions and universities more specifically in society. So not just as producers of people for the utility machine, but just as engaged citizens. And I think that those two umbrellas, I think, help us frame the question into what internationalization or international collaborations or even domestic collaborations might achieve in advancing these two themes, right? So first, if you turn them back to the future of work and the employment market and the role of universities in that, it's quite trite to say that the future of work will be very different from today, and even today's domain of work is very different from last year's. To take just one simple example, the rise of remote work, right? I mean, this was, of course, a phenomenon for the last decade, but it has accelerated to a remarkable degree over the last year because of COVID and other reasons. And most analysts predict that at least 1 in 4 to 1 in 2 workers will be remote workers even after COVID has passed. So if that's one of the most direct manifestations of what the future of work is likely to look like, are universities of today preparing people to be virtual workers? My suggestion is, not intentionally at least, because our programs and curricula have not yet adapted to that being mainstream. That's one phenomenon. Second, we know, of course, of automation and the routine functions being taken over by machines. And this has been talked about for decades, of course, all the way from David Otter's work at MIT and the Carl Frey and Osborne research at Oxford and so on. But yet, higher education has still been very slow in adapting the average graduate to work with machines and with each other in a way that the machine worker becomes the norm. We still teach people content knowledge as if they are the primary workers. It's not to work alongside machines as co-workers. And that's, I think, likely to be a phenomenon at work in the future. Third, we know for a fact that the employment market is not anymore just the single career of 30 years, right? We have more and more people who move careers 5, 6, 7 times, even in a 10-year horizon, and change occupations, change domains, change countries, change all kinds of things. And yet, most universities prepare people for the same mindset of one career or one profession. So that's very different. How do you adapt to that? And finally, I mean, I don't want to take too much time in the employment domain. We know that more and more of work is not done by employees. I mean, it's certainly true in India, I mean, in the US now, where at least 1 in 4 of jobs in most companies is done by non-employees, right? People who are gig workers, contractors, task-based employment. I mean, they're not really employees, they're just contractors. So universities don't prepare people in any meaningful sense to be a non-employee. We prepare people to become employees. So that's one way in which universities' functions has changed and whether collaboration could help change that. And finally, the second theme is about universities and society, right? I mean, and I think the previous speaker touched upon this very presciently, which is, it's a global village, but yet most countries are seeing a rise in nationalism and much more inward-looking policies and politics. Okay. Do universities have a role in getting societies to think more without boundaries, when in fact our work and our world is much more boundary-less? Okay. And the politics of most countries is becoming boundaried. How do we, as universities, have a role, or what role do we have to play in breaking those kinds of trends which seem counter-historical? So our universities kind of charged with bringing society back to a historical linear trajectory of borderless world, or are we kind of part of becoming more nationalistic? So I'll stop there and we can revisit.
Thank you, Mr. Professor Sandeep Gopalan. I'll go to Professor Pullappa Subbarao. Welcome to panel discussion, sir. Your introductory remarks from the East Africa.
So, Mr. Radhakrishna and Academic Times, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. In fact, the Industrial Revolution is advanced because of the COVID. This opportunity, this threat has given us the opportunity to learn from advanced countries. Even our students now are able to listen to the lectures of the teachers from US, India, South Africa, and many other countries because of the COVID. In addition to that, our students are able to interact with the students of various countries, particularly our collaborative universities in US, South Africa, and mostly from India. And in addition to that, our students are learning more of entrepreneurial skills now, not only in business, even in the IT. The COVID has provided them this opportunity. So we don't feel we are backward now, we feel we are advanced. Though we are in Africa, we are able to collaborate or link with the universities across the world. In addition to that, what we feel is we can live in Africa, but listen to the lectures across the globe. That means local plus global. What we feel is now it is a global, so that we live in Africa, but learn from the teachers across the globe. Not only this one, even interacting for the creative projects or the innovative projects, and the close interaction between our students and the students from various countries. So what we feel is this provided us the opportunity to learn from each other, though we are restricted to one area or even sometimes even to the home because of the lockdown. The corona situation in our country still is worse, but at the same time, we and our students are able to learn a lot from across the world. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity once again.
Thank you, Professor Subbarao. Professor Janat Shah, welcome to the panel discussion, sir. Your introductory remarks on the global collaborations, please.
Thank you, Mr. Radhakrishna. Again, as some of the panel members talked about, it's a very vast topic. So I'm going to talk into two specific. One is you talked about this future-ready workforce, and the second, globalization. What does it mean to universities? Now, I think even before COVID, this idea that when we looked at the industry and the way work was happening, the digitization and the whole idea of digital cooperation has become very important. And actually because of COVID, it has got accelerated. But if you look at our own curriculum, honestly, we find we still very little of digital economy is a part of our curriculum. So I think there's a need to do a lot in that particular area, right? Because we don't have, whether we look at our case studies, the kind of organization we study, there's very little of that. So I think we need to do that in part of. So there is a lot of work need to be done in terms of building right material, case studies in that part. When it comes to specifically talking about internationalization, it's interesting that by and large, most, especially Indian institutions, right? When you look at both faculty and students, by and large, you would find, are Indian, right? Even though we know global, when you talk about knowledge, global supply chain, it's a global in nature. So I think on research find, we always had, international collaborations, but a lot of them traditionally have been more a one-to-one, faculty works in a collaboration with another faculty. For some reason, we have not found any meaningful collaboration which are at university to university level. And there may be an opportunity to figure out a way of structuring that better. Some of you not been able to do that very well. When it comes to students, I think most of us have found a way of having exchange programs through which we ensure that students understand what does it mean to work in a different culture. So on one hand, because of COVID and a lot of this online interaction, on one hand, that opportunity for a, education-wise collaboration is all going to increase. But I think to understand culture, I still feel that it'll be important to do actual visits, because, how does you work in a team? It's one part to do working as a virtual team. So I think it'll be interesting to see how we're going to blend this, that take advantage of, some of this online collaboration which we've been doing. Can we continue that? At the same time, bring in some of the earlier work which we used to do where we used to have a student exchange program. So how to blend this is going to remain an interesting question for all of us. So let me stop here as part of my initial comments. Thank you.
Professor Shailendra Singh, welcome to the panel discussion, sir. Can I have your introductory remarks, please?
So thank you, Radhakrishnan ji, for this opportunity. As I see that for gaining knowledge, we should keep our windows open and get the knowledge from all over the world. And this philosophy has been prevailing in the country since long, as Professor Janat, Shah and others have already said, that at research we have been collaborating internationally and with professors one-to-one and universities also. We have got some collaboration based on our mutual synergies among students. Like I'm talking about IIM-Raipur, we have multiple collaborations with various business schools in Europe, America, as well as Southeast Asia. So we have seen that how our students want to grow and learn things internationally and cross-culturally. And it is in that working virtually versus working in person space, it is said that if one works in person space one-to-one or one-to-many, that time the skill and the self-confidence that is built, that is very, very important skill nowadays for whatever we say future-ready workforce. So that is what they say. But still, I would like to say the term that is global, that means think globally, but work and act locally, because whatever we learn, that should be contextually relevant and should help the country and the space where we are right now. I will stop here and we'll take it.
I'll go to Professor Bharat Bhaskar, Director, IIM-Raipur. Sir, welcome to panel discussion, sir. Can I have quickly your introductory remarks, sir?
Thank you, Radhakrishnan ji. And all my predecessors have already spoken about the kind of contextual collaboration we have right now. But what I want to focus on, that collaboration and especially international collaboration is not only need of hour, but without that we can't survive. But if you look at the global context today, we have been talking about globalization, but the result can be seen if you look at the top 10 market capitalized companies of the world. You'll see the top 10 companies in early 2000 used to have oil companies, banking companies, etc. and so on. But what we have today, out of top 10, roughly 7 companies are nothing but collaborative platform providers. You can call them a digital technology companies. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Tencent, Alibaba, you can keep on naming them. What these companies have done is something that provided a global collaborative platform, apart from the services we use in various forms, but fundamentally they're bringing the global population together in various ways and providing mechanism for collaboration, which means that not only the enabling collaboration, but also providing opportunities to create newer models, newer products which have not been seen hitherto. And that is the fundamental challenge which we face. If we don't collaborate and get onto those kind of models, we'll be left behind one more time. Because where the economy is shifting, where the intellectual, as Professor Shailendra Singh said, as Professor Janat Shah said, that knowledge has to be integrated and shared, we'll be lagging behind in sharing and integrating that knowledge. If you also look at the growth of these companies, not only what they do in technology, themselves are the collaborative companies. Their workforce have been collaborating across the globe. The content has been coming across the globe. They're not a one country company. All these companies which you talk about are top companies, which means the growth lies where the collaboration is going to happen. That is the other aspect. These companies experimented, and as my predecessor, I think Sandeep Gopalan was talking about, that work from home has become a reality. Work from home for these companies was a reality, but because of the enablement of these people, these collaborative platforms, and of course the network bandwidth available today, They have created, Google has gone on to say that I don't know, for at least for next 1 year, they're going to be work from home. Because they find there's a lots of saving and lots of collaboration can happen. Because of visa problems, even the workplace is becoming collaborative. Google shifted many of their H1 visa employees when they were not able to find H1 visa during this 2020 COVID scenario and otherwise not finding a place in lottery. They shifted them to India, Canada, and various countries, and they said you continue to work on same projects. So the work did not suffer. We have reached that level of economy today. This has an impact on the education sector's collaboration. You see the Harvard University started session. All even the Indian students had to start their session from sitting in India. That means we have a different level of opportunity where our students can work with, and as I think Professor Sadagopan was pointing out, Professor Janat and several of my, I think Professor Narayanan also talked about the same thing, that we can take classes, we can collaborate with each other's institute. The area where certain institute may not have expertise, but the students are interested in exploring those electives or those aspects of the education. They can also we can have a collaborative arrangement without traveling, without incurring that kind of a huge expense which had to be incurred earlier. In today's environment, we can do that. So newer models have to emerge. COVID has provided that opportunity. We have experimented in various ways and each of our institute as a necessity. Now, what I would say, because of the experimentation, lots and lots of data is sitting. What are going to be the absolutely relevant models, good models, have to emerge. I think we are at that initial phase, how education sector will evolve, how this new collaborative model amongst the education, not only the student to student, research collaboration, various other aspects of the collaboration will evolve. It's time for us to build and ruminate on that further because we have been experimenting and creating data in past 1 year. As Professor Janat said, it has highly accelerated. What would have happened in next 5 years have happened in past, 8 to 9 months or almost 1 year now. So with this, I'll put a stop to my initial remarks. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bharat Bhaskar. Mr. Suryanarayan, CS, welcome to the panel discussion. Your perspective on future-ready workforce. What is the future of higher education?
Thank you, E.T. Thank you, Mr. Radhakrishna. First of all, let me thank all the professors. I'm out of context to an extent because I'm among all the respected professors from speaking. I cannot say on behalf of the industry, from the industry. There are 3 points which I feel this topic covers and very, very powerful points. First, let me tell you, today we are in a world where we work from anywhere. Most of the professors touched upon that topic. We are in a stage where we can teach from anywhere. That you can see that from the panelist itself. We are all speaking from everywhere. We also learn from anywhere. So, in fact, at Aruba, we used to say, people move, networks must follow. Meaning, wherever you go, my network follows. So today, this transformation of work from anywhere, teach from anywhere, learn from anywhere, some say that it is because you should thank code for that, but irrespective, it was supposed to happen, it happened. Okay. Now, in that topic, there are 3 powerful points. One is future ready. Okay. Now look at what is future and ready. That's infinite, frankly speaking, because future is infinite and readiness is infinite. Because we know today, if you feel that I'm ready for the industry and I go, after 1 year, I may not be. So that's the reason even after you go to industry, you learn and relearn. Whatever you learned, again, you need to relearn. So that's one very important aspect. Future ready is very powerful. Okay. Because when I think Professor Sandeep touched upon that we are learning, are we industry relevant? Okay. So if we go behind that, then we will never be relevant. The reason is industry keeps changing because the future keeps changing. Next important, I can say, point in that is collaboration. Okay. Now, from a collaboration point, let me give you a perspective that you would have watched kids growing, right? Okay. So I call it as, from an industry point, machine learning. Okay. For me, the brains of human being all same. Okay. Everybody are born with the same capacity, with the same. It's not that one is big, one is small. Okay. So it's all about how much input you give to the kid for him to become an AI, artificial intelligence. Okay. Now, how do you give? What is that machine learning? You eminent professors, you are giving us that great inputs, making us future ready, right? Or making us the AI missions for the world. Okay. Now, machine learning. First thing we say that learn from your parents, learn from your grandparents. That's the experience which is coming. Now, just imagine if I learn from Professor Sadgopan, and I have an opportunity to learn from Professor Janat, Professor Bharat, Professor Sandeep, Professor Sailendra, Professor Narayanan. Nobody can beat me in the world, let me tell you. So it's all about collaboration. Now, this transformation of collaboration is the key for the world, and industry is looking forward for that. The reason is, I don't want a person to be ready in X. I want a person to be ready in everything what industry requires. So collaboration is the best thing to happen. I feel this is the right time which we have arrived at where the collaboration is happening. Now, collaboration perspective, okay, within India, within Bangalore, within respective city, to the globe is the next best thing to happen. Okay, now we don't have that difference between east, west, north, south. It's one single world where globally the collaboration is happening for that infinite thing called future, and for the infinite thing called readiness, which is again learning and relearning. Okay, so that's the reason why the definition of these points are important as a punch note, which I feel which is very much relevant. So make the kids, that is the human being, to the best AI in the world. The barrier is all the education institutes like you. Thank you, Radhakrishnan.
Respected Chairman, sir, in your perspective, what are the real issues that higher education is facing today? Which are the concern areas? How do we come out of that? If you can share.
Okay, thank you. I will not get into all issues, but I will probably focus on issues of concern with respect to the topic today, in the sense of global collaboration. Okay, I think we got some amazing viewpoints in the last half an hour. I think what probably India needs is, among the Indian academic institutions, we should look at international collaboration strategically and not tactical manner. So at this point in time, what happens is we all send some half a dozen students, 10 students, 20 students, they go there. It's a nice thing to talk about. The students come back and have some nice experiences. We are happy, the parents are happy, the media is happy, the ratings go up. But I think maybe we should probably look at it strategically. One is, these student exchanges are a little easy because first of all, the costs involved are a little less. And then, most of the time parents are able to pick up the tab, etc. But I think we probably should really look at students and the faculty, one or two, traveling. Not saying necessarily for a longer time, 6 months, but students may be traveling for 6 months, maybe faculty for a little less. But faculty involvement is important. And then it should be two-way. I think as Janat Shah said, it can't be one way. We should probably have international students coming to India, Indian students going to whichever country, I think that is. And then instead of each institute trying to do some arrangement, I think maybe the industry and government can come together and kind of find out a way of funding it so that we have a critical mass. I would say about 6 to 10 students, I'm just saying, it should be a number, that kind of, it's not a single student. And then really look at, today technology permits that you can plan it well, so that 6 months using electronic means, you can plan out everything. See, if you really look at some of the global challenges like global warming, etc., if you break it down, there will be some 100 challenging problems. It would probably need a computer science, it would need some amount of economics, it would need some physics, it would need some environmental engineering, it would need some chemistry. And so get a group of about 5-6 students from India and 5-6 students from United States, 1 or 2 faculty members. They work on it for about 6 months. And then next 6 months, the students go through a plunge experience. So that when they come back, they actually have a solution, maybe a small problem, but a reasonably good solution. So we should actually challenge them. Okay, it is nice to have experiences of walking around Rome. It is important. Okay, so there is a cultural aspect of it. I'm by no means kind of de-emphasizing it. But I think it's much more important today. I think we should go and get it. So I think a group of students, 10, 12 students with a couple of faculty members over 1 year, will actually be able to do something. Imagine we have 100 such groups in the country. So 100 groups of 10 students each in 1 year will actually shake the world. Okay, I think that is the kind of stuff we need. Probably it would need some funding. One has to get into details. But I think if we do it for about 5 years, we would have made a huge difference. Otherwise, it's a nice thing. But I think it's a time has come to do great things, just not nice things. That is my take at this time. Over to you, Radhakrishna ji. Thank you.
Professor Narayan, in your perspective as a national importance institution, which are the concerning areas that global higher education should look at?
I will again touch upon a small part because it's a vast area, and Professor Shadagopan has nicely talked about some model. Let me talk about a model or a need to do the reverse, that is bringing students from other countries to India, which is also equally important. And in some sense, it's easier, it's in our hand. Today, I mean, the Prime Minister or the country is very proud that we are supplying such well-needed vaccines to the whole world. And that's a matter of great pride indeed. We can also be providing great education or fantastic education to all kinds of people, not only people in the West, but also elsewhere. And the same model that Professor Shadagopan talked about, we can have students, 10 students and a faculty member coming from an African university or any university anywhere and come and spend 6 months in our institutions. This is very important because we have in the old days, and if you want to talk about very, very old days, the Nalanda and Takshashila where students came inside, and we can repeat that model. And this is all it requires is government to put in the models and the money, and it's not a whole lot of money to facilitate travel from outside to India. But it also requires, Professor Gopalan said in the beginning, which is a very valid point, that in spite of globalization of technology and things, there is too much nationalism going on these days also, and that's a concern. When we have students coming in into our country, many of us have had the good fortune of studying elsewhere, or universities in the US or Europe or places like that. And we go there, we become fully part of that environment in academia as well as other socio-political activities. Whereas in India, we had the bad experience of the students coming into India. They are banned from doing political activity. Somebody was seen in Chennai and was deported to Russia and things like that. These are, not Russia, Germany last year. So these are things which are going in the wrong direction. If you want to have students come in and they really want the exchange and they want to enrich us, you need to let them be who they are. And this is a very important thing. And this is, I think, getting students from elsewhere to India, especially not maybe the expensive rich countries, but other countries, which are equally valuable as terms of providing diversity. Providing that is very much in our hands. Our nation is rich enough today. There is enough schemes in the country. It will probably take 0.5% more of education budget in the year to facilitate, say, 5,000 students in all areas, not just technology areas, but also the social sciences, the environmental, the global warming. So I think this is one thing that the country can do right away, because it doesn't require too much MOUs on the other side. The block is usually on our end. So let us attempt that first, is my suggestion at this point.
I'll go to Professor Sandeep Gopalan.
I think the speakers made some excellent points and came at it from very fascinating perspectives. But I just want to touch upon a couple of things that other speakers mentioned, which relate to your question. And I think, firstly, Professor Bhaskar mentioned collaboration in industry and how Google or Amazon or Walmart, etc., have a global workforce. It's a very interesting phenomenon, right? So if you really consider that kind of example, my view is that's a very thin conception of collaboration. It's more a transactional arrangement or a contractual relationship. And I'm sure he would agree as well. It's collaboration, but it's a very thin conception of collaboration. In contrast, some of the other speakers talked about research collaboration. To me, that's a deeper and thicker meaning of collaboration, because truly 2 or 3 or more people are coming together, not in a transactional sense, but to create something new or different through a melding of each other's competencies and skills and so on. So I think the reason I mention this is to illustrate how, as a sector, we have really failed to collaborate. most of our relationships are transactional. I mean, they talk about study abroad, sending 2 students here, we take 2 students, you take 2. I mean, it's all a very, very thin kind of relationship, which is purely transactional. And that brings me to my second point, which is what Dr. Shadagopan mentioned about critical mass. And that's one of the key metrics of how you achieve true collaboration, right? I mean, if you have too many fragmented, thin efforts, you will never achieve critical mass to make any difference. And true collaboration requires critical mass. So to move down from that abstract point to a very simple point, look at the number of engineering colleges in India. Right? I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of these places exist. And yet most of these products struggle in the marketplace. I mean, they don't possess the very basic attributes that employers want. They can barely read or write, they can't communicate, they don't have the professional skills to be ready for the workforce, etc. And on the flip side of it, there are a number of institutions in the West or elsewhere, which are very good in the humanities, in arts and sciences, in communication, etc., which don't have an engineering school. So it seems in many ways the peculiarities of the fragmentation in India in higher education would lend itself or should lend itself as a very attractive partner for true collaboration. So in other words, if I'm a university here without an engineering school, why do I need to spend the money to create an engineering school if I could partner with one in India, which is very good at engineering, but really not all that good in the humanities or arts and sciences? But that sort of thing never happens, right? I spend my money building an engineering school, and the Indian engineering school struggles to teach its students communications, English, etc. So I think what we need to do as a sector is find ways to achieve true collaboration and meaningful collaboration through critical mass, through joining efforts, so that there's not this fragmentation and disjointed effort, which means everybody achieves very little. Instead, let us all achieve more. And finally, to the point that Professor Narayanan made, I think we do have a role as universities in bringing the trajectory back towards a more harmonious, integrated world than the nationalistic impulses that are current. And I think too many institutions do not speak out, do not say much, or do not do their role in society beyond just the utility production of workers. I mean, that can be done by a vocational school, right? I mean, there's a difference between a vocational school and a university. And I think too few universities fully embrace that role. And again, collaboration could help. I mean, if you're a university in Myanmar today, if you could partner with a university in India, your voice in speaking up against the coup is much louder. And the same with a school in India or the school in the US, when you have deportations or visa refusals. If a sector as a whole speaks, it's different to one individual university complaining about a student facing issues. So, I mean, that would be a couple of things that I want to share about the need to think of collaboration as much more deeper than just a transactional relationship.
Thank you, Professor Sandeep Gopalan. I'll just go to Professor Subbarao.
Thank you, Radhakrishnan. We all speak about the supply chain in industry, but when it comes to the education sector, we don't take care of the supply chain. This is because we are in the fragmented situation rather than in a unified situation. That is the one. And when I speak the supply chain, it does mean from the primary school to the industry and again relearning. And in addition to that, what I say is most of the national institutes are one side, and on the other side are the private universities and the public universities in India or even in Africa. When you take the public universities in most of the countries in the world, except the advanced countries, they don't have the adequate financial resources. And after the globalization, government has capped the funding to the public universities. So the facilities in the public universities, most of the public universities in developing countries, they are of maybe 1990s facilities, or maybe little addition to that one only. And when it comes to the private universities, though the facilities are wonderful, but their approach is the profit. Like any business, private university approach is the profiteering. So this is the major concern, whether it is in India or in Africa or in most of the developing countries, this is the situation. And the second one is when you speak about the education as a business, and again, it is not the product that the industry expects. It is the product that may be a little bit different. And only a few students who are rich, they can afford it. And when it comes to the public universities again, some of the private universities and the private colleges in India, you see most of the higher education in India is in the form of the private colleges as well as the public universities and the private universities, apart from a small portion of the national level institutes like the IIT, IIIT, IIMs. And when you see these two teachers' capability, they have only the one side of the knowledge, rather not the industry side of the knowledge. So we need a teacher come an executive or teacher come an industrialist to teach the students the most appropriate and relevant knowledge that the industry needs, rather than providing the knowledge that is available in the textbooks or even in the case or even the open source systems. And that is the another concern. And the next one is the massive expansion of the education in India during the last 3 decades. Most of you know it, the management colleges as well as the engineering colleges. The kind of the output that they produce, they are not employable invariably. So therefore, what I feel is we need a professional teacher here in the sense, experience both in teaching as well as in the industry, like teacher come manager. And in addition to that, the industry linkage with the universities, though we speak too much of it, but in practice, particularly in public universities and the private universities, it is limited. Because the industry feels it is a disturbance to them to provide the practical skills to the students. But at the end of the day, they don't realize that these students would be their inputs. That means the human resource of the industry. So ultimately, students, it is very hard to get the practical skills to the students in the public universities and private universities in developing countries. And the another one is the ethical perspective in the education sector as a whole. What I am mostly speaking from the university side in the developing countries rather than the top level, national level institutes. So here, when I speak the ethical consideration, the public universities, the teachers or the students or the administration or the government as a whole, when you take as a whole, the approach is not completely ethical as it was in 1960s, 50s like that. So therefore, ultimately, the kind of the students we produce may not fit to the industry. As Suryanarayana says many times, that the fit between the industry and the teaching and the universities. Unless we make this a supply chain so compact between the universities and the industry, and again between the high schools and the universities, and between the primary schools and the high schools, the supply chain should be organized and completely effective. Then only we can meet the human resource needs at the global level of the industry at present as well as the future needs of the industry. That is learning as well as relearning. So thank you for giving me the opportunity again.
Thank you, Professor Subbarao. Professor Janat Shah.
I'm going to, rather than talking about a concern, I'm going to talk about opportunity, especially for an Indian institution. And I'm going to just build on what Professor Gopalan and Professor Narayanan talked about.
Okay.
I think, actually, we have a great opportunity to become an education hub. I'm just building on the ideas we talked about. We've been talking about that whole center of economy is going to shift from a west to east. That's a direction everybody's talking about. Now, when that's happening, traditionally, West has been the center of higher education. I feel if economy is going to shift, India has an opportunity to become an education hub on this part of the world. If you look at the strengths which we have in terms of, democracy, English language, and we have an institution which have been there, whether you look at our older IITs and IIMs have been very successful for the 60 years of history. Now, if you are able to, take advantage and say, can we become education hub? And where building on several ideas, where partly we can make it virtual and partly, physical. So I think there's a great opportunity which we have, and it'll be nice if we are able to actually capture that. If you look at this as a next 10-year kind of horizon and say, can we, become education hub? So I feel it's a great opportunity, and somewhere this post-COVID world again provides us an opportunity. So it could be a concern that why are we not global? But I'm saying actually it can be turned into opportunity given the overall shift which is happening.
Thank you, Professor Janat Shah. I'll just go to Professor Shailendra Shah.
There is a divide between Indian universities and if we say UK university and US university. The quality of education in Indian universities is very, very uneven. Somewhere it is a top-notch, which can be of any global standard like IITs, IIMs, and IITs and others. Whereas somewhere we are not having even basic facilities of chalk and the blackboard, and 98% of the budget goes only disbursing salary of staff and faculty, and actually classes are not happening. Whereas if you go to other side, the decent quality is there in almost all the universities. So that is what is a concern. But I would like to emphasize more what Professor Janat Shah and Professor Narayanan have echoed, that India can become a global hub for education, and NIRF is a good intervention by the present government, which has already tried to put a ranking system where research, teaching student ratio, and how many outside students are there, all those things are being measured. So where we stand vis-a-vis all other, that gets measured. Plus, we are also aspiring for international accreditation. Professor Janat Shah's Institute is already AACSB accredited, and many others in India are already QUIS and AACSB AMBA accredited. So they are the certification that we are at the global standards. And if we are showing that, then there is no, I will say, restriction that foreign students, particularly from developing economy perspective, they may come to our place. Rest, I would like to say the new national education policy has already emphasized that India can, good campuses of India can go and experiment with their education programs across the globe. Similarly, they have also said that if you are performing well, you can invite students to your institution and study in India is a program which ADCL is managing, and we are getting students. Plus international campuses which are in top 100, they are also allowed to open their campuses in India, and regulation will be less. That's what has been promised in new national education policy. But I would like to flag that India has to work a lot on higher education, because the kind of investment that is promised 6%, if that is actually delivered, then we will be having some better position. But currently, that's not the situation, and hope the government will be spending more money. Otherwise, we are having lot of higher education institutions which are not sufficiently funded, and they are starving for fund. And because of that, there is not sufficient faculty members and other staff. So there is a promise that we are going to do very well, and there is a talent in the top business schools, top engineering schools, and top liberal universities. But we have to do much more than what currently we are in order to become education hub. One point I would like to say, on which Narayanan has said about too much nationalism. there is nothing bad about nationalism. We must be proud of our nationalism, and whatever is the student, whosoever is coming to our country, they should respect our norms and our thing while studying here. Like we go and we study outside, then we respect their norms.
Professor Bharat Bhaskar, sir.
Professor Gopalan already talked about the deeper collaboration and the challenges related to that, how it can be accomplished, the model related to that. Professor Janat talked about how we can take the opportunity forward. But one of the biggest thing which we can do is, as we are getting into the economy, we need to understand what kind of workforce we require in the future. Are we really preparing the people who are ready to be the workforce of the future? Certain attributes are required, apart from of course, the great knowledge about the subject matter, understanding of what is the current knowledge, etc., current technology trends are. That is we're focusing on and trying to impart. But what is the need of the future is that ability to work across the cultures. Now, one is that we have been talking about teaching cross-cultural models, etc., and so on. But this gives the opportunity of collaboration where people can learn from each other, working in a collaborative teams. So having an open-ended model in all kind of global universities, even Indian universities should open up. For example, early on in my career in teaching, I used to have a software project management course in which we used to have people from a university in US and my IIM collaborate on the project part. So both sides will teach their own material related to software project matter, but the project team will consist of few students, a group from my place and from that university. Together, they learned probably lots of cross-cultural working capability than anybody could have imparted them theoretically. So that is one aspect of collaboration which we can bring in, and it's easy fruit to pick in a current internet, whatever our network connected environment, that we can integrate. That how you work in a virtual team, because future of work is going to be in the virtual team and working as I would not touch upon which Suryanarayana will talk about, working with the machines. So collaborating in a virtual team with the humans as well as the artificial intelligence created environment. So that would be one collaborative challenge which we need to face, which need to incorporate in our curriculum, bring multiple institutions from the globe together. They work together with each other. Second is identifying the complementary opportunity. I think my predecessor already focused on, and I think Professor Sandeep Gopalan had talked a great deal about what institute in India may have and what other institutes may have. Rather than developing those capabilities and waiting for several years for them to get developed, we can collaborate on those frontiers, which will bring in the virtual team capability, which will bring in the cross-cultural working ability capability, as well as provide the immediate growth to institutions which collaborate with each other. So I would say since we require these attributes, we can take this opportunity of a collaboration across the globe to build those kind of models in our curriculum, as well as amongst the faculty collaboration for complementing each other's capabilities. So in the interest of time, I'll stop here. Thank you. Thank you, Radhakrishnan.
Thank you, Professor Bharat Bhaskar. I'll just go to Mr. Suryanarayana. In relevance of collaborations to build future-ready workforce between industry and workforce, do you see any time gap or skill gap? Some of your perspectives on this.
Yeah, thanks again for the opportunity. First, let's define what is time and what is skill. Okay. For us, the first teacher is our mother or the elders, right? The first thing they teach is Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama. They equate the teachers as God. Okay, so they say that here is your teacher, he is going to show you the future. Okay, so the future is defined by the basics of what Indian culture talks to us. Now, when you define future, that's the key aspect. What is future? Okay. Now, from an industry context, let me tell you. For me, automation is the future. For me, robotics is the future. For me, artificial intelligence or machine learning is the future. For me, virtual reality or augmented reality is the future. For me, digital experience is the future. COVID gave us a different aspect to that revolution of industry itself. Work from home, as many of you touched across, work from anywhere. We used to talk about from the Aruba perspective, we used to say work from anywhere, I don't care. So this is what industry says, right? But what is industry following? Again, it's following we as a human being, how we are changing. Okay, our needs are changing. My interest is I don't have time to go from my South Bangalore to Whitefield because it takes 2 hours. So rather I sit in a machine which can drive itself. And in that 2 hours, again, I keep working or learning or something. So that's the future, right? So that's the reason why that innovation is coming. So what is industry doing? Industry is in line with what human beings' future is. So industry is well aligned. You will see today startups coming, working on that need of the human being. Okay. Now, what is happening from an industry point? It's going at a very fast pace, very fast pace. Now, you would have seen the technology transformation happening very fast, right? We wouldn't have collaborated like this had it not been a COVID. We would have been, Mr. Radhakrishna would have invited in one hotel in Delhi, and we would have sat on some chairs and we would have spoken face to face, right? So that's the innovation. That's the need of the hour. So that's the industry where it is going. Now, I align industry to workforce. Now come to workforce. Is the workforce ready for all the industry needs? Maybe, may not be. Okay, whoever is ready is getting that job, right? Whichever workforce is ready are getting that job. Okay. Now, why do people go out in search of the universities for their advancement of the skills? Today, what is the 3 triangles which I correlate is, one is the industry, second is the workforce, third critical aspect is education. To make that workforce ready, education is the key value. Okay, so that's the reason why you need to fill these dots, and there should be collaboration among all the 3. If industry does not collaborate with education, you may call it as internship or certification. If you remember our days, the moment you pass out of engineering, first thing you do is, hey, let's do one of the industry certifications, maybe MASc or whatever. Okay, so the reason why is I'm seeing as, am I ready for the industry? You take any of the large scale Indian ITITS companies, first thing they used to do was 6 months or 1 year. You call it as, I don't want to call it as bench, internship, or they used to put in hardcore training. I remember one of the biggest ITITS company in Bangalore, they used to take all the new hire to Mysore. For what? 1 year or 6 months training. Why? Because they are not ready for the industry. So the point is, if the education can bridge that gap and make the workforce ready from the day one for the industry, then this gap will not be there. Okay. If you remember a conversation which we used to have earlier, demand and supply. What India did, oh, you want, there's a demand, you want supply, I'm here. We produced lakhs of engineers. And one of the professors touched upon, we have engineers, but now we don't have jobs, or we don't have exposure to that. Why? We are supplying it, is that quality which we are generating? Because why am I bringing in time is the most important aspect. Look at the time, the value of time. Whoever values the time, I'm telling you, they will be ahead of curve. We used to talk about that we will launch satellites. Today, there is an industry which says, I launch satellite and bring the rocket back. I'm going to reuse that. Whoever thought that I will still innovate around launching a satellite, he's already gone. Time is gone. You need to think 2 steps ahead. Okay, so that's the reason why time is the most critical aspect. Today, let's take the higher education for us. For a normal kid to grow to AI, as again, Professor Bhaskar touched upon that, he has to become the best AI. We say first standard, second standard, third standard. After 12th, you do engineering. After engineering, you do double graduation. After that, you do PhD. With this collaboration, if I reduce that time, what happens? A 15-year-old kid will learn how to launch a rocket probably. That's the reason for, as I said, the human beings are all same. It's about collaboration, how much input you can give it to that person to become super intelligent and be ready to the industry, relevant to the industry trends. And that's the most key point. So I always respect Professor Sadgopan's statement. He used to start off in some of the webinars. He used to say, look at the current generation kids. Do you want them to teach typing? It's irrelevant. You don't need a typewriter itself. Why? Because you're on touchpads. What about, okay, I learned that touchpad is the future. So let me teach the kids to type on a touchpad. in the next 2 years or 3 years, cognitive thing comes. Probably I'll think in my mind and I'll say some machine, I want this music, that machine will run that music. I don't even need to touch anything. Okay, so same example which I gave, a driving skill, right? I used to teach my kid cycle, a scooter, car. Moving forward, what is he going to do? He's not going to drive anything. He's going to sit on a car just effortlessly, and that car is going to, he doesn't even need to remember which road to take. He doesn't care. Why? What is he valuing? Time. How fast I can go to that place. So that's the reason why it's very important. As I told you, future ready, collaboration, and global perspective is the most important aspect, which I feel time, this gap of skill will be taken care of. The gap of time will be taken care of. To do post-graduation and graduation, I may take 6 years to learn some skill. Probably this collaboration will lessen that time and bring me the same knowledge much faster. So with that note, I thank Radhakrishna and eminent professors for
thank you, Professor Narayanan. Thank you. Do you see institutions like ISRO, NASA, reputed institutions which sent hundreds of rockets to sky, playing a significant role in global higher education, in supporting blended learning, hybrid learning, giving some kind of platform? Your ideas.
Yes and no. You see, what happens is, what is important is, I think anytime, anywhere, education is possible. I think as PJN said, right? So our students can learn what the students in Learning Alone can learn. Okay. So satellite is one technology, but there could be many other forms, like even Google was toying with the idea of balloons. Okay. They dropped it now. Okay. But many other things will come. But what is important is not one technology like satellites only, but many combination of technology. But to me, much more important than, I think today, for blended learning to happen, the limitation is not technology. That is what I mentioned. Everybody is able to Zoom. 5-year-old kids are able to do Zoom session with their teachers, right? So technology has suddenly come up. But our ability to tame the technology is much more important. Okay, I think as PJN said, I think all of us education institution should not go back to completely to whatever we have been doing. I think we ought to learn from this COVID experience. Maybe part of our education could actually be delivered through other forms. We don't necessarily have to do these 45 contact hours delivered over 15 weeks, 55 minutes. Okay, we don't have to get into those rigidities. Okay, so to me, I think it will be nice if, as you said, NASA, ISRO, all these people come together. They should really look at other forms, okay, obviously. But to me, the mindset is much more important. We academics should actually see how do we leverage this technology, and there could be other forms. You see, Zoom is one form. See, Zoom still has one difficulty, right? You see, I tell you, ideally, one of the platforms I do hope will happen very fast is, when I go into the classroom, I have this 50 students or 60 students. Imagine that I am able to do some image processing and recreate a classroom like. And when somebody is asking the question, that person's facial expression I am able to see. I can do it for 6 people in this screen, right? But I can't do it for 50. Okay. So those kind of stuff will happen. So then suddenly the distance is completely gone. And some could be from India, some could be from outside. Okay. So I might have disappointed you because you thought that, I would take the position that technology will deliver. So technology is important, but I think our ability to tame the technology is much more important.
Mr. Narayan, your final words.
I want to take off from exactly where Professor Shadagopan left. I think it's not about technology or it's about means. It's about attitude. If we think, if we truly feel we want to be connected with and we want to get diverse experience, and we want to try, even when I'm away, I want to conduct the classes, or even when students are sick, they can still take the classes, which is not possible in normal times. If once we say we have to do this, and if the institutions and systems are enabled sufficiently, we will find a way to do these kind of things, whether it is within the country or a global, or new modes of teaching or new ways of testing. In fact, this is one of the things that got exposed in this COVID times, at least in my mind, is our education, our university education, whether it is IITs, IIM, or even MITs, the best of institutions in the world, is not focused as much on education as it is on testing. We have all reduced to institution that looks at that one A, B, C, D grade and fairness of that grade. Is somebody cheating? Is this, are they doing as much work as the previous batch did? These kind of very, very irrelevant, in my view, questions guide most of our decision. So instead of that, how can we focus on learning, imparting learning? This is a true realization. We try to change some things at IIT-Hyderabad, but not many things change, but something we could change, that have more project-based and other. Why do we have exams? Why do you have a 3-hour exam that is conducted with some proctoring, online proctoring, 3-camera system? This is really, we adopted a bad system and now we are trying to preserve it in a difficult environment instead of rethinking what the good system have been to begin with. So, these are things that it's all about mindset, it's all about attitude, it's all about the ability to, or the willingness to think out of the box. It's really not out of the box, but today it looks like out of the box. And looking at the core. That's what I would root for.
Professor Sandeep Gopalan, your final words quickly, briefly.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to touch on one thing which we did not talk about today, which is regulation, right? So it's very easy to talk about collaboration and the need to cooperate, etc. But you've got to have a regulatory framework that enables or supports such efforts. The true reality is most of us in higher education operate within a regulatory environment that is more conducive to a 20th century university, if not even earlier, than it is for the post-COVID, post-connected, automated kind of workplace or society of the future. So, which goes back to the assessment and testing and the credit hours and the seat hours and all of these kinds of requirements of how many years a degree is supposed to be and how many credits in each year and what kinds of exams and so on. All of these ultimately are peripheral questions to really the bigger question as to what is the function of the university and how best to achieve it. And that finally ties back to your point about NASA. The reason we have innovation in space is not so much because of the old model that NASA used to follow. It's because NASA adapted to acknowledge that it could not solve all of the problems. It needed private industry, and it needed to create a regulatory environment that could foster innovation, right? Which is why all of the innovation here in space and autonomous vehicles is through private actors in the individual states, which have their own regulatory environments, which are more or less supportive of innovation. So that's my final thought. I think we need to have the environment for it.
Thank you, Professor Sandeep Gopalan. I'll go to Professor Subbarao. Your final words.
The purpose of education, is it just giving knowledge or is it to prepare the workforce? That is the basic question. Maybe in the olden days, it was the knowledge. Now it is preparing the workforce for the future. When you say the purpose of the education is to prepare the workforce for the industry, there should be the supply chain close linkage between industry and the university. In fact, the industry has changed the business process through the business process re-engineering. The old business was different and the business of the 2020 is different. So if the supplier is unable to supply, the business was able to produce by itself. And now you see, if the universities still stick to the old system of the university system of the old business process, in the industry may come into picture and take it up and they do as they like. For example, there are some management institutes started by some business houses across the globe. They are preparing their own human resources. So therefore, what I feel is, unless the universities change to the needs of the industry, the purpose of the education, which is already changed, it won't be achieved. And the second one is what I feel is, to bridge this gap, already there is so much advancement in the Industrial Revolution 4 and as well as in the genetical engineering. There would be the days so close, there may be they may insert a chip in the human mind. It's the chip which contains the entire previous knowledge, which we need not learn from the schools or from even the universities. It is just aligning to the workforce. So therefore, what I feel is we have to understand the industry needs, align so closely with the industry. And in addition to that, better we should be 2 years ahead of the industry, 2 years ahead of the Industrial Revolution 4, Industrial Revolution 4 tools, so that we can prepare the students. Otherwise, the industry will select the students from those universities who can produce the workforce as their requirements, or sometimes they can produce their human resources too also.
Thank you, Professor Subbarao. I'll go to Professor Janat. Your final words, sir, briefly.
As several colleagues have talked about, one is we'll have to change our mindset, and also there'll be need for a change in regulation. So I'll just talk about one part. Professor Sharendra Singh talked about very poor quality of education in a second and third tier institution. If we are able to work on our regulations and use of technology, we might be able to actually provide very high quality education to the second and third tier. The only thing, they're looking at teachers more from a process perspective rather than a content. So content can come from a top tier institutions, and the faculty in a second and third tier can focus more on a process of using content provided. So I think, but all this will require a change in a mindset as well as change in a regulation. So it's a great opportunity, but unless we can use this technology in a more meaningful way, I'm not so sure by itself it'll change everything. Thank you.
Professor Shailendra Singh, if your final words, please.
In order to remain relevant, we have 3-4 critical skills that we have to develop in all the educational institutions. One is ability to learn and relearn, ability to learn how to learn. Second, being so much change, having so much change, ability to be resilient. That's very, very critical skill. And technology savvy and emotional intelligence are what we call today soft skill. So these are the critical skills that we should hone among the pupils so that they are future ready. And I hope the institutions will take these skills seriously and give their attention there. Thank you.
Professor Bharat Bhaskar, if your final words, please, briefly.
Radhakrishnan, when you talked about NASA and ISRO, I would touch upon that one more time. My predecessors have already touched upon that.
Please.
NASA is a great example of a collaborative environment where the NASA basically is a explorer, creator, and purveyor of the knowledge. Now, when they do it, NASA as an entity by itself doesn't do it. It's all completely collaborative environment. I think at least 50 to 60, if not more, universities in the United States are directly tied into NASA. Their researchers, their students, PhD and master's students are working on the projects of NASA. All this knowledge gets compiled and collaborated, this collaborative knowledge gets compiled together and new knowledge gets created. So NASA is only a binding factor. And that is how it has grown to be what it has become today as a mechanism, and they have used internet very effectively, not now. In 1980s, when ARPANET was coming up, NASA created its own network called Space Physics Analysis Network, high energy network for their scientists, so they can come on that collaborative platform. Research can be shared across the globe, etc. and so on. Talking from my own experience, that I worked for 7 years in a Goddard Space Flight Center environment. And in one of my projects, which was only $2 million funding, at least we had 4 universities and almost 15 masters and 4 or 5 PhD students working on the same project, while about team of 15 people used to work on that project. So this is the kind of environment where the knowledge at the highest end gets created, but the creators are sharing that knowledge. Now, advantage of that is the university professors also remain who are part of this project or these projects. Similarly, the PhD students who are coming out are prepared with that industry and current knowledge gap, which is normal problem which we face in India, doesn't happen because they are the creator of the latest knowledge. And as a consequence, universities progress, knowledge domain progresses, student progress, as well as the overall research environment progresses. So in our case, ISRO and our similar kind of research organization if they also build similar kind of a collaborative environment, may not be, I'm saying there may be critical projects, so not every NASA critical project is done by university students, but where your non-critical components are there, they can involve these kind of environment. I think they do involve certain IITs and IISc, etc. to a certain extent, but a greater involvement of a university environment and that kind of a collaboration will lift the high quality of the education in our country as well. Thank you.
My final question to Mr. Suryanarayana, your final inputs if you don't mind.
In fact, I believe India had a different base platform. Our Vedic days, it's a debated topic, whether we had that knowledge, whether we didn't have that knowledge, irrespective, we have a very strong, as a country, from the knowledge base. Okay, so do we need to go to space to identify that, or should we go to our base is something which we need to relook into it. Irrespective, technology is something today, this event itself is the example of perfect example, because whatever I'm speaking, you are hearing without any delay. That's a network, right? So in fact, CTO of my company, Partha Narasimhan, used to define this network as central nervous system, okay, of our body, because again, I'm correlating to the body, right? So now the central nervous system, if there's no collaboration within that body, it's of no use. Okay, so we talk about something called as API, Application Programming Interface. Now, why am I bringing that topic is basically because today, from a skill set perspective, it's not just one area which you need to look at. Skill set is today, when I talk about artificial intelligence, my machine learning is multiple barriers or multiple platforms. So it's the integration point, touch point across all these multiple points is the most important aspect. So skill set on one platform may not be of future ready. How do I integrate with multiple other platforms? Similarly, when I bring it to this context, education, when we do, if you see education, I have seen enough instances, mechanical engineering being a team lead for all the software leaders, software coders. Okay, the reason is it's not about you having that knowledge of mechanical engineer. It's about something else which he touched across, some of the professors touched across soft skill, leadership skill, and many other things. So from the end context, which I feel is industry is ready for the future. Okay, so it's important that for that industry, we definitely need a skilled workforce. For that, the most important platform is you as professors and the Education Institute. And all this is revolving around one important aspect called time. If we respect time, speed up that process, I'm telling you, nobody can stop us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Respected Chairman, with your permission, we conclude today's panel discussion. I sincerely thank you, Professor Sadagopan, Professor P.J. Narayan, Professor Sandeep Gopalan, Professor Subbarao, Professor Shailendra Singh, Professor Bharat, Bhaskar, Professor Janat, Shah, Mr. Suryanarayana CS, for joining today's panel discussion, making it a grand success, which is part of Education Innovation Skill Summit.
Thank you, everyone, for deep delving into the topic and sharing valuable insights. Ladies and gentlemen, do participate on social media as well and share highlights using the hashtag ETGEISS. Next, we have 2 parallel sessions, one on Skill India and other on National Education Policy 2020. Stay tuned.